Donald Trump stood in front of the American people and said, and I quote, "We're going to hit them extremely hard. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong." Meanwhile, Australia's Prime Minister got on camera and basically apologized. "Gas prices are going up, expect more pain, we'll try to protect your wallet." Britain's Prime Minister? Same speech, same apology, same defeated energy. Every Western leader on earth is begging their citizens for patience. Trump, he's promising fire. Now, here's where it gets wild. At the exact same time, he's launching what might be the dumbest war in American history, a ground invasion of Iran. His Secretary of War just unveiled a map that claims everything from Greenland to Ecuador belongs to America's security perimeter. Greenland, Panama, Cuba, Canada, Venezuela, all of it. Every analyst, every pundit, every talking head says the same thing. This man is insane. He's fighting a war he can't win in the Middle East while picking fights with half the Western Hemisphere. And honestly, they're right. On the surface, none of this makes sense. But what if, and just hear me out, what if destroying the American empire is the plan? What if crashing the global economy is the entire point? Because if it is, then Donald Trump might be the most dangerous genius to ever sit in the Oval Office. Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how many nations are watching this unfold right now. Here's exactly what we're doing in this video. I'm going to show you, using game theory, resource maps, debt data, a 1996 Russian playbook, and cold hard logic, that Donald Trump may be executing the most sophisticated geopolitical strategy of any American president in modern history. Not because he's winning, because he's choosing to lose in a very specific way. A way that forces the entire planet to become dependent on North America. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to like Trump. You don't even have to believe a word I say. All I ask is that you follow the logic, step by step, map by map, number by number. And by the end, you tell me if this man is stupid or if he's playing a game nobody else even realizes has started. But to understand why Trump might be a genius, we first need to understand why the entire world thinks he's a complete idiot. And honestly, they have very good reasons. So let's build the strongest possible case against this man before we flip the whole thing on its head. Look at Iran on a map. Just look at it. Massive, mountainous, brutal terrain from every single direction. Coming in from the west, through Iraq, you slam into the Zagros Mountains, a jagged wall of rock that stretches over 1,000 kilometers. Perfect terrain for guerrilla warfare, perfect for hiding drone launchers behind ridgelines, perfect for ambushes. Attacking from the east through Pakistan, desert. Hundreds of kilometers of flat, open, scorching desert where American supply lines become sitting ducks. Pushing up from the southern coast, mountains again. And you're still 1,000 kilometers from Tehran, which is ultimately the only objective that matters. Right now, America has roughly 50,000 troops in the entire Middle East. For context, the Iraq invasion in 2003 used over 300,000. Iran is nearly 4 times the size of Iraq with 3 times the population. 50,000 troops is not an invasion force, it's a speed bump. But here's where it gets even more suspicious. A letter just leaked from Lieutenant General Leonard Anderson to the reserves. The message: we must get ready to deploy, fight, and win. They're not just sending active duty, they're calling up reserves. That's a signal of total war preparation. And then there's Polymarket. Now, Polymarket is a betting platform where people wager real money on global events. And 3 indicators on that platform are flashing red. First, the Pentagon Pizza Index. Sounds ridiculous, right? But it's a real intelligence signal. When the Pentagon is preparing to launch a major operation, staff work overtime, around the clock. And what do they order? Pizza. Deliveries to the Pentagon have spiked dramatically in the last 2 weeks. Second signal, certain social venues in the DC area have gone quiet. When military and intelligence personnel are pulled into operational planning, nightlife drops. It's a pattern that's been documented before every major military action since Desert Storm. Third, and this one should genuinely scare you, someone just placed a $200,000 bet that a ground invasion of Iran happens this month. If it does, that person walks away with over $1 million. Pause for a second. That's not gambling. That's not some guy throwing darts at a board. $200,000 on a specific military outcome within a specific time frame? That's inside information. Someone knows. So the invasion is likely coming, and by every military analysis on Earth, it will fail. But wait, it gets worse. Because while Trump is about to launch an unwinnable war in the Middle East, he's simultaneously picking fights with everyone. He's threatening Denmark over Greenland, pressuring Canada with tariffs and annexation rhetoric, squeezing Mexico, sanctioning Colombia, embarrassing Cuba so badly that analysts are whispering about a possible invasion there too. And NATO, the very alliance he needs to help secure the Strait of Hormuz, he's been antagonizing them for months. His own Secretary of War, Peter Hegseth, just stood in front of cameras and unveiled something called the Greater North America Strategic Map. Everything north of the equator, Greenland to Ecuador, Alaska to Guyana, declared part of America's security perimeter. Every geopolitical expert watching this is saying the same thing. This man is all over the place. No strategy, no coherence, no plan, just chaos, right? Okay, let's put our thinking caps on. Let's use game theory, the mathematical study of strategic decision-making, and ask one very uncomfortable question. What happens if America invades Iran on the ground? Step 1. America loses. The terrain is impossible. The troop numbers are insufficient. Iranian forces have been preparing for exactly this scenario for 40 years. A ground invasion fails. Step 2. If America loses in Iran, it gets forced out of the Middle East entirely. The petrodollar, the agreement that oil is traded globally in US dollars, collapses. American military credibility evaporates overnight. Step 3. If the petrodollar collapses, the US dollar as the world's reserve currency comes under existential threat. The global economy, built entirely on dollar dominance, begins to unravel. So the chain is simple: invasion, defeat, empire collapse, economic meltdown. Every serious analyst agrees on this sequence, which is why every serious analyst says Trump is insane for even considering it. But here's the question nobody is asking. What if Donald Trump wants to lose this war? What if he wants the American empire to collapse? What if destroying the global economy isn't a bug, it's a feature? Because if you flip the objective, if the goal was never to win in Iran, but to use Iran as a controlled demolition of the old world order, then suddenly every single stupid move becomes brilliant. Stay with me here, because what I'm about to show you on the resource maps will change how you see everything happening right now. 20%, that's how much of the world's oil flows through the Middle East. And most of it passes through one tiny choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. Japan imports 75% of its oil through that strait. India depends on it for a massive chunk of its energy. South Korea, China, Europe, all connected to that same narrow waterway. JP Morgan just released a report saying that if the strait stays closed, the world runs out of available oil reserves by mid-April. Mid-April, that's weeks away. Sounds catastrophic, right? Sounds like the end of the world? Here's the thing nobody's telling you. Oil is not rare. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, larger than Saudi Arabia. Canada has the third largest. Russia has enormous reserves. And the United States, still one of the top producers on Earth. So, if Middle Eastern oil disappears, and that's exactly what this war guarantees, the world doesn't run out of oil. The world just becomes dependent on a completely different set of suppliers, North America and Russia. Now ask yourself, who just took effective control of Venezuela? Trump. Who's threatening to absorb Canada? Trump. Who controls American domestic production? Trump. Funny how that works. But oil is only the beginning. And this is the part that almost nobody is talking about. Everyone focuses on energy. Nobody talks about phosphate. See, the Strait of Hormuz doesn't just carry oil tankers. 7 critical resource categories flow through that waterway. Oil and LNG, yes, but also phosphate, ammonium, sulfur, urea, helium. Why does that matter? Phosphate, ammonium, sulfur, and urea are the raw materials for fertilizer. Without fertilizer, modern agriculture collapses. You cannot feed 8 billion people with organic farming. It's physically impossible. Industrial fertilizer is what keeps this planet from mass starvation. And where do the raw materials come from? Largely the Middle East. Flowing through Hormuz, block the strait, and you don't just create an energy crisis, you create a food crisis. Every country that imports fertilizer components suddenly can't grow enough food. Now look at who exports nitrogen, the key ingredient in fertilizer. Pull up the global nitrogen export map and 2 regions dominate, North America and Russia. Everyone else is a net importer. See the pattern yet? But there's one more layer. Helium and sulfuric acid, both flowing through Hormuz, are essential for semiconductor fabrication. Every advanced chip that powers AI, military systems, smartphones, medical equipment, they all require these chemicals in the manufacturing process. Block the strait, and you don't just hit energy and food. You hit the AI supply chain, you hit the tech economy, you hit everything. Everyone talks about oil. Nobody talks about phosphate. And phosphate is what keeps 8 billion people from starving. Now let's connect all of this to the number that terrifies every economist on the planet, $39 trillion. That's America's national debt, an incomprehensible sum, a number so large that most financial analysts have been warning for years that the system is a Ponzi scheme, that eventually the countries lending America money will stop buying US Treasury bonds and the whole thing implodes. But who exactly is lending America this money? Pull up the list of the largest holders of US Treasuries. At the top, Japan. Number 2, China. Then Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, India, all Asian countries. After that, United Kingdom, Cayman Islands, which is essentially European finance, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Canada, Ireland, Switzerland, all European. Notice something interesting? The countries financing American debt are almost perfectly correlated with the countries most dependent on Middle Eastern oil and fertilizer. Asia and Europe need Gulf resources to survive. Asia and Europe hold American debt. Before this war, the nightmare scenario for Washington was simple. What if Japan dumps its treasuries? What if China shifts to gold? What if Europe moves to Swiss francs? If any major holder decides the dollar is no longer worth backing, the Ponzi scheme collapses overnight. But now, after this war closes the Strait of Hormuz and destroys Middle Eastern supply chains, where does Europe get its energy? North America. Where does Asia get its fertilizer? North America. Where does everyone get their food security? North America. You can't abandon the currency of the country you depend on for survival. 39 trillion in debt, and somehow, after this war, that number matters less than it did before. The Ponzi scheme doesn't collapse, it gets reinforced. Not because anyone trusts it, but because everyone needs what America sells. Let that sink in. Now you might be thinking, okay, but Trump's not smart enough to design something like this. Where would he even get the idea? And the answer is, he copied it from Vladimir Putin, who's been running the exact same playbook in Ukraine for 5 years. Look at the war in Ukraine right now. Dark red on the map shows where Russia controls territory. Pink shows where it still wants to go. After nearly 5 years of fighting, Russia has a long way left. Military analysts estimate this war could grind on for another 10 to 20 years. And that's not a failure. That's the plan. Because while the world sees Russia stuck in Ukraine, something remarkable is happening inside the Russian economy. Total industrial output has been climbing since the war started. Military production is surging. Drone manufacturing, which Russia initially depended on Iran for, has shifted almost entirely to domestic production. Imports from Iran stayed flat, while Russian-made drone output exploded upward. Russia isn't stumbling through this war. Russia is using this war to completely restructure its economy around military-industrial production. Civilian industries, declining. Military industries, dominating. The trend is accelerating. Within 4 or 5 years, Russia will be primarily a war economy, industrialized, self-sufficient, and capable of fighting indefinitely. But here's the part that will blow your mind. In 1996, almost 30 years ago, a Russian political strategist named Alexander Dugin published a book called Foundations of Geopolitics. Almost nobody in the West has read it, but inside Russian strategic circles, it's practically scripture. A book written in 1996 predicted almost everything happening right now. Dugin's argument is devastatingly simple. Western civilization, built on secularism, individualism, and liberalism, will eventually collapse. Not because someone defeats it militarily, because its own values destroy community, erode identity, and hollow out meaning. Societies built on consumerism and self-interest cannot hold together under stress. When that collapse comes, and Dugin argues it's inevitable, all Russia has to do is remain stable, stay unified, stay coherent. Dugin predicted civil war in the United States as left and right tear each other apart. Predicted the collapse of European unity, predicted instability across China's periphery, predicted chaos in the Middle East. Sound familiar? His strategic prescription for Russia: secure Ukraine, which controls 1/3 of the world's grain-producing carbohydrates and massive energy reserves. Build alliances with Japan, Vietnam, India, Iran, create a self-sufficient trading bloc, and wait. Wait for the storm, weather the storm, emerge from the storm as the last power standing. Russia didn't invade Ukraine because of NATO expansion. Russia invaded Ukraine to implement a 30-year-old grand strategy for civilizational survival. And Donald Trump is watching and learning. If Putin has the third Rome, Trump has the technate. Remember Peter Hegseth's map? Greater North America. Everything from Greenland to Ecuador, Alaska to Guyana. Every sovereign nation north of the equator declared part of America's security perimeter. People laughed at that announcement, called it delusional, called it imperial fantasy. But map it against resource data, and suddenly it's the most rational strategic document released by any government this decade. Pull up the global freshwater map, color-code it. Dark blue means abundant fresh water. North America? Dark blue across the board. The Great Lakes alone contain 21% of the world's surface fresh water. Add in Canadian rivers, American aquifers, Central American watersheds, and North America is sitting on the largest freshwater reserves on the planet. Russia? Same story. Massive freshwater reserves. Lake Baikal alone holds 20% of the world's unfrozen freshwater. Now look everywhere else. Africa? Light blue trending toward crisis. Europe? Surprisingly vulnerable. Middle East? critical scarcity. Southeast Asia, dependent on rivers flowing from the Tibetan Plateau, which China controls, and that's China's hidden weakness. Sure, China has fresh water, but it sits upstream of India and all of Southeast Asia. If drought hits, and climate models say it will, China faces an impossible choice. Forget oil for a second. The real map that predicts the future isn't energy, it's water, and when you see it, everything clicks. North America and Russia are the two most resource-rich, water-secure, geographically protected regions on Earth. Every fight Trump has picked in the Western Hemisphere suddenly makes sense. Greenland, Arctic resources, Canada, oil sands and freshwater, Venezuela, largest oil reserves on Earth, Panama Canal, controls trade flow, Cuba, secures the Gulf of America. He's not randomly picking fights, he's assembling the fortress. The New World Order said, America protects the world. The Technate says, America protects itself and sells resources to everyone else at whatever price it wants. To understand just how radical this shift is, you need to see the two visions side by side. September 11th, 1991. George H.W. Bush stands before Congress and introduces a phrase that will define the next 3 decades, the New World Order. 3 pillars held it up. Pillar 1. America becomes the financial capital of the world. Manufacturing gets shipped overseas, to Germany, Japan, China. Wall Street becomes the center of gravity. America doesn't make things anymore. America finances things. Pillar 2. Secular multiculturalism. Borders dissolve, national identity fades. What unites humanity isn't religion or culture or shared history. It's the love of money. Consumerism becomes the universal religion. Buy things, stay happy, don't ask questions. Pillar 3. Pax Americana. Global military domination. America provides security for the entire planet. Nobody needs their own military because Uncle Sam handles everything. And if anyone challenges this arrangement, America destroys them. Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Serbia. The message is clear. For 30 years, this system worked. Sort of. It made Wall Street obscenely rich. It hollowed out American manufacturing. It created the most extreme wealth inequality in American history. And it left tens of millions of Americans, the ones who used to build things, angry, broke, and forgotten. Enter Trump, not with a reform plan, with a wrecking ball. The Trump world order flips every single pillar. Pillar 1 flipped, forget finance. America becomes a resource and manufacturing superpower again. Oil, gas, grain, minerals, semiconductors. The New World Order was software. It ran on trust, on agreements, on institutions. The Trump World Order is hardware. It runs on oil, grain, water, and land. Software crashes, hardware survives. Pillar 2 flipped. Multiculturalism is dead. Christian nationalism takes its place. National identity returns. Borders harden. Immigration stops. DEI programs get gutted. The binding force isn't consumerism. It's faith, flag, and shared purpose. Love of country, love of community, love of God. Pillar 3 flipped. Pax Americana is over. MAGA replaces it. America doesn't police the world anymore. America rebuilds itself. National rejuvenation, infrastructure, industry, energy independence. Every dollar that used to fund a military base in Germany or a peacekeeping mission in Africa gets redirected inward. Why should American taxpayers finance European pensions? Why should American soldiers die so Japanese shipping lanes stay open? Trump's answer, they shouldn't, and they won't. Not anymore. Now, is this vision moral? Is it good? Is it just? Those are separate questions entirely. But is it strategic? Absolutely. Every single piece connects. The war in Iran collapses Middle Eastern oil, making the world dependent on North American resources. Resource dependency locks foreign nations into the dollar system, securing American debt. The Technate consolidates the resource base. It's not chaos, it's controlled demolition. So let me ask you the question one final time. Is Donald Trump an idiot? By every conventional measure, absolutely. He launched an unwinnable war, alienated every ally, threatened sovereign nations, crashed markets, accelerated global instability, but conventional measures assume the goal is to preserve the current system. What if the goal is to demolish it? What if every provocation, every insult, every seemingly random aggression is actually a calculated move to force the world into a new configuration, one where North America sits at the center, controls the resources, and dictates the terms? I'm not telling you this is the plan. Geopolitics doesn't work with certainties. It works with probabilities, patterns, and logic chains. But I am telling you this, the logic holds. Across oil maps, across debt data, across fertilizer supply chains, across freshwater projections. When logic holds across that many independent variables, you should pay attention. Next week we go deeper. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And drop your country in the comments. I read every single one. Because this story, it's just getting started.